It's Monday again. We've missed you and you've missed us.
Happy Monday.
Happy Monday indeed.
Or whatever day you're listening to this. Maybe people don't listen to it on Monday.
Oh, we better stop saying Happy Monday then.
No.
Happy whatever it is.
Oh, happy day.
Oh, happy days.
Oh, happy day.
Oh, happy days.
Right, don't steal my career, please.
Sorry.
So what are we talking about today?
I don't know. I thought you were going to ask me something. Why don't you ask me something?
Anything. I thought an interesting topic would be to discuss why do you think periods, menstruation is a taboo topic still, and why is it something that, I don't know, fathers and daughters tend not to talk about, lady problems?
Well, I automatically clam up because it's a taboo subject. Very interesting question, to which let's try and explore some answers. Why is it a taboo subject?
Well, it shouldn't be a taboo subject, but I mean, for some people it's just uncomfortable to talk about.
And possibly uncomfortable to listen to as well.
I've never been on that side, so I wouldn't see it as uncomfortable to listen to, but why would it be uncomfortable to listen to? Because you can't relate?
Given that men never experience it, it may be very difficult for them to understand. They can be sympathetic, but it's something they're never ever going to experience. I'm not in any way trying to make an excuse. I was just making the point that it can be uncomfortable in two directions, but it shouldn't be. You know, it's something that happens to women, and therefore men shouldn't be excluded from that, I don't think.
Yeah, I don't see why. I think in a way, I don't know, but I feel maybe people aren't educated enough on it, and maybe it makes them feel uncomfortable to hear about.
I think certainly men are not educated enough about it. I mean, obviously, most men will know what menstruation is, I sincerely hope.
But I feel like I've had to explain to a few guys my age and be like, what do you not understand about ovulation and what it actually is? Like, I don't think...
They possibly don't understand a lot. It's just...
they don't have the basic biological knowledge. They're just like, oh, you just bleed. And I'm like, well, not exactly. Like, do you not understand the biology behind it? And I'm sure there's girls that are not even educated enough.
So maybe it should start in school, and we should be educating both sexes more about this. And for that matter, there are male things as well that women possibly don't know about. Yeah,
I just think maybe actually it goes back to the education that maybe makes it feel like a taboo issue or a cultural thing.
I think you just mentioned the cultural thing quite rightly. I think particularly with menstruation, because of cultural issues which are deeply embedded, that again, it's something that is almost not spoken about.
Yeah.
And of course, menstruation was seen as...
dirty.
Dirty. As it was a time when a woman was impure. Almost, to the extent that it could be excluded from society.
I mean, I've read that it still happens in some rural areas. But then again, at the same time, some other people, the other flip coin would be actually it's a cleansing time. You're getting rid of stuff rather than actually being dirty. So you're cleansing your body. Your body has the power to regenerate cells and get rid of them at the same time.
So, particularly with menstruation, yes, huge cultural hangovers, which is possibly part way of answering your question, why is it not discussed? But it raises a wider question, and that is why, given that we're talking here about take away with your father, why do daughters not talk about what you phrase as women problems with their fathers? It's only with their mothers, or I'm generalised, obviously, but that tends to be the case.
Yeah, unless there isn't a mother figure. So
but
it
is that
has to
something
be.
that you feel uncomfortable talking to me about?
Well, I don't think I've ever spoke about it until recently.
No, you
We would
haven't.
never have had. Like, I remember when I first got my period, and Mum said, "Oh, you should tell your dad," and I was like, "No."
But well, let's just explore that. Why did you not want to?
I don't know. I feel like I felt uncomfortable about it. It felt weird, even though it probably shouldn't. And it's not that I was kind of.
You might be worried what kind of reaction I might have.
I don't
to
know,
it.
but I don't think I was kind of. It's definitely. It's not like my family said, "Oh, this is something very private you shouldn't say," or "It's weird and there's something wrong with you." That's not what I'm saying. But I think maybe somewhere from somewhere else subconsciously I got the idea that it's kind of like a secret. It doesn't concern. I don't know.
It's clearly not just happening to you.
Oh yeah, I know. Yeah, but it's just I don't know why it's such a kind of girl thing. It's like it kind of bonds us together.
But do you think making it a girl thing actually, what I'm trying to say is that, does that actually make communicating worse, if you see what I mean? And you said that you didn't want to talk about it because you saw it as maybe just a girl thing. But isn't that reinforcing the kind of taboo to a certain extent?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that reinforce it. And I think some of us grow out of it. I know that I did. So, for example, at school, all the girls, like, if they are on their periods and they have to go change their sanitary products, you kind of sneak it in your pocket or take a bag with you or sneak it in your sleeve. And like,
almost pretending it's not happening.
Yeah. And then after some point, I was like, what's the point of this? Like, why is this sneaky behavior of like hiding a pad or a tampon? Like, it's a bit silly at this. Like, why?
Again, because of the taboo around the whole subject.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying.
Somehow...
That then there's these little behaviors that reinforce it that I think some people then eventually grow out of. So, for example, I remember sometimes I feel very bad on my period. I get really bad pain. I feel ill. Sometimes I feel queasy. I have headaches. Like, I just can't function sometimes. And I think I had work and I was like, I don't know what to say because I think they won't take me seriously if I say I've got my period and I just really can't work tonight. But why is that a thing?
Why is it a thing? Because...
Or I can't come into school because of this, but it's not considered a valid...
Because it's somehow... You're right, it's not seen as somehow a valid medical excuse.
Yeah, whereas like if someone has genuine...
migraines.
Problems, yeah, like migraines, vomiting, girls that have endometriosis might have severe cramps that, some people have major issues, yet is somehow not a good enough excuse for things. I remember I talked with one teacher and I said, oh, if my recital is on my period, I just won't be able to do it. I just don't see how I'll physically be able to do it because even if I take painkillers, then my whole body kind of goes numb and I can't breathe properly and I don't have breath control and whatever. And she said, oh, we'll have to say you're sick. We'll figure it out. I'm like, so this isn't a good enough excuse to say that, hey, I'm in a lot of pain.
Well, and that's the whole point. It's not seen as sickness somehow because I think it happens by definition every month and it happens universally to females of a certain age between the menarche and menopause. It somehow is seen as, well, that's just part of your everyday life. It's not It's not a...
It's your job to deal with it.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that, I'm not trying to reinforce the idea that periods are a sickness and that females or people that experience periods can't do stuff because they're on the period. I'm just saying that it can happen that sometimes I might feel fine and I might be able to run a marathon, and sometimes you're like, ha, I can do what you can do whilst bleeding. Haha, you know, try catch me now. And sometimes it's physically impossible because of the side effects. So it can be both ways. But yeah, people are like, it's not an excuse. It's natural. I understand it's natural and you kind of learn to deal with it. But then again, why can't I use it as an excuse if it is how I'm feeling? If that makes sense.
No, it makes perfect sense. And I think one of the reasons you can't use it as an excuse is because of the male-dominated world in which we live, where it's just not taken seriously.
So, yeah, but I don't know. For example, how would you feel, say, if you were an employer and someone that works for you came and said, I'm going to have to leave because I feel unwell, and you said, you look fine, what's going on? If you were to question them and they say, oh, I've just got my period, I have to go home before, you know, I know my body, I know how I react, I'm just not going to be able to stay here. Would that make you feel uncomfortable?
No, and it's happened to me before as an employer. You have to be sympathetic and you have to look after the well-being of your staff or those that work closely with you, if you're a line manager or something like that. This is where I think there is a difficulty, because obviously as a male, you have no comprehension of what that individual may be going through. You know, it's something that you've never experienced yourself and never will experience yourself, and possibly know very little about. And that's where I think people think, oh, you mean you've got a stomachache? And have no comprehension. It's like, so males need to be better educated in this.
Yeah. I don't know if is it worth getting into the I think I told you this, but I don't think I said it on the pod about I was reading a bunch about the pill and hormones and stuff, and they basically said that I think it was recently they were doing research for an injectable male contraceptive, and the side effects are the same as the female contraceptive, if not, some may argue, lesser. And I think, I want to say about 6 people out of, however, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but basically very few participants complained about the side effects. They said, this is way too much. And they cancelled the whole research. Didn't try to, work on it, even though it was 96% effective, if not more. I can't remember the numbers. I'm not good with numbers. Rather than, being like, oh, okay, let's investigate more. This is what research is for, right? Like investigating further into the side effects and the effectiveness. Whereas the female contraceptive was done years and years and years ago. I want to say over 20% complained about the same side effects, yet it's widely available, hasn't really been modified to address said side effects. And I believe 2 women that participated in the studies passed away, which could just be correlation, but yeah, and there's been, if you look up the numerous problems with female contraceptives and how they're not being addressed or you're not being informed about them, it's actually quite shocking. And I was interested to kind of see like, okay, but why are these side effects okay for women to experience, but intolerable for men?
So we talked about cultural perceptions and the importance of cultural perceptions in relation to menstruation earlier on. And I think this is all about cultural perception as well. Again, I generalize, but certainly within the society in which we live, I fear, can't say this for sure, but I fear that contraception is often seen as, quotes, the women's problem. It's almost up to it. The women have to somehow stop themselves getting pregnant.
It's their problem if they get pregnant.
What I mean. It's as though men have pushed this problem, if it is a problem, and that's debatable, onto women and disown that problem. And that, I think, is fundamentally at the root of what you're talking about. It's not seen as a male problem.
Yeah, or some would argue that it's not seen as medically important to care about female issues, if that makes sense.
I'm not so sure about that. I think it's more about the fact that it's women who, by definition, give birth, and therefore contraception is seen from a female perspective. It's about stopping giving birth, if you see what I mean. And in that sense, men have pushed the ownership of that onto women, whereas, of course, by definition, it should be a jointly owned issue.
But I would argue the difference is the female contraceptive isn't only used as a contraceptive, it's used as medication to address a lot of issues.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
So I think a larger amount of women actually take it to address issues rather than contraception.
True, but you raised the issue of essentially there being a chemical, whether it's taken by injection or whatever, but a chemical version of a contraceptive device to men, essentially to presumably to stop their sperm production or whatever it might be. I'm guessing here because I have not read the research in the way that you have. So that clearly is about contraception. It's not about presumably having an effect on other male health issues.
Yeah, because one would kind of assume that it's easier it's easier for the men in a certain extent to not be effective. I don't know how to say it.
You mean for them to be made infertile?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think one of the problems is, and this is why men have pushed the problem onto women, is that, again, it's about gender stereotypes. And here, again, I generalize. Well, if you think of, this particular contraception, male contraception isn't available, arguably, unfortunately. But if you think, well, what are the alternatives to men? There are principally three, I guess. Condom, which we all know, which are probably the most widely used male form of contraception. They can, of course, have what they call the snip.
A vasectomy. Isn't a vasectomy reversible?
I actually have no idea. I believe it is.
So what's the big deal? Sure. Why can't you just have a reversible vasectomy?
I don't know. We need to go away and I ought to know. And again, that shows my ignorance. So you've got essentially some form of barrier, a sheath, a condom. You've got a vasectomy. And, of course, the other one is withdrawal. Mm-hmm. And the trouble is that all of them, men may see this as demeaning in some way, I'm not having proper sex if I'm having to wear this bloody thing.
Or I'm not going to the doctor for a vasectomy.
Yeah. Or I'm not going to have I'm not having a doctor, playing around with my testicles or whatever.
But it's okay for a woman to go and get the coil inserted or whatever.
And that's what I mean. It's this male perception of their bodies and what is appropriate for them, and they push this problem onto women, which men have to hold their hands up and say, hang on a minute, this just isn't right.
Yeah.
And even if you look at condom wearing, particularly in certain countries around the world, condom wearing, it took something like the AIDS crisis
to get people to
get men to even wear condoms, because this was like, oh my God, I'm not a real man if I'm having to use one of these
protection.
things. Yeah.
So do you think maybe we don't talk about that enough?
I'm sure we don't talk about it enough.
But that's not a men issue.
And I've never had a conversation in all my life, really, with male friends and colleagues. Certainly I would never have had it with my father, about male contraception. I mean, you might joke, like, sort of like, oh, got some Johnnies on you or something like that, and you see jokes on television programs and what have you around Johnnies, as though they're almost seen as a symbol of fun.
No, I think people don't. I know people my age, I feel like some people take it seriously either because they've heard stories of people close to them,
right,
like problems, or someone's got an STD or an STI, or someone did have an accidental pregnancy or whatever, and then they kind of like, oh, okay, it's more common than I thought, if that makes sense. I don't know. But I feel like we're kind of tracking away from periods.
But we are. You're right, but you started also then going on about contraception, and the commonality here is that in both instances, I think there is a failure because of males' lack of information and, for that matter, interest in these subject matters.
Yeah, which doesn't really make sense.
Well, it makes a lot of sense. It's all culturally constrained. It's culturally constructed.
Yeah. The mystery of the vagina. It's just a mystery.
It's a mystery.
It's weird how it's like, it is this kind of like secretive, I don't know.
Secretive to whom? I mean, hopefully not secretive to women, and they've all got one.
You'd be surprised.
Well, tell me about it.
Well, obviously, anyone's genital organs are different from everyone's genital organs, and I think there's this perception of how female genital organs should look like. And, some girls growing up, theirs don't look like that. So they're like, oh, there must be something wrong with mine. Or mine's not beautiful, mine's ugly, mine's this.
So there's a concept of what is a beautiful vagina.
Yeah, I mean, if you look in most biology books at school and stuff, they're portrayed only in one way, I would argue.
That's probably the same for penises as well.
Yeah, probably. But I feel like vaginas are a bit more complicated. Maybe, I don't know. But they can vary a bit more, I don't know.
But again, I don't think men really talk to other men about their penises. That's
so again, some guy might be like, is this normal? I don't know if this is normal or it isn't.
Yeah, every man likes to think that they have the ultimate penis. But it's not as though maybe some schoolboys compare theirs, in the changing room. I don't know, but not a lot of that went on when I was at school, and I went to all boys' schools. No,
but for example, someone who's been circumcised might not know what being uncircumcised is like, and vice versa.
Of course they don't.
So it's the kind of same idea that some girls, I don't know, may have a different looking vulva or labia or whatever, but because in school books they only see it a certain one way, they're like, oh, what's wrong with mine? So I don't know if school books show circumcised or
But
uncircumcised
is this a conversation
penises.
that you'd ever have with other women growing up or girls growing up?
Not until no, but that's the whole point. It's kind of like a secretive thing of like, is something wrong with mine? Mine doesn't look like that.
But I think, thinking about it, I think men, well, certainly boys probably think that about their penises as well. They assume, or they hope that, you know, whatever they've got is normal, or actually probably better than normal, however one defines that. But at the end of the day, they've got nothing to really compare it to.
I think it's just a thing in general, but I don't know. I feel like we've kind of gone off topic. I don't know what the topic was.
Interesting topic. At least I thought it was interesting. Never really thought about it before.
So, I don't know.
So let's go back. So the topic was, well, I asked you, did you feel uncomfortable talking to me as your father about women's problems?
I definitely would when I was younger. I feel like at this point it's been going on for so long that I'm kind of fed up of, you know, trying to hide it or not discuss it and what have you.
You mean the hormone? Sorry, you said it's been going on so long. What's the it?
Having a period.
Oh, having a period.
Yeah. So.
Right. Well, yeah, that's been going on for quite a while. Yes.
So, yeah, but I feel like if it was some of the first few years, because I know there was times when, I don't know, say I'd get blood on the bed sheets or something, and I would never tell you. I'd feel so embarrassed and I just wouldn't know what to do with myself. Or if I got my period, which is one thing that happens in this bloody country. I don't know why some people don't have bins in their bathrooms. So you end up, you know, you want to change your sanitary products and you're just there like, what am I meant to do with this? There's no bin. And it's very uncomfortable to kind of have to think, oh my God, what's my escape strategy?
If you go into a male household.
Yeah, male households don't have bins.
I think I've always had a bin in my bathroom.
Well, maybe you do, but some people don't. So it's kind of an uncomfortable.
Yeah. So you have to like roll it up in a tissue and put it in your pocket or something.
Yeah, which is uncomfortable. But I wouldn't be like, Dad, I have something I need to throw out. I can't find a bin.
Yes.
It would be like my own secret.
Yes, because again, you're just.
Or if I got my period somewhere in public and I didn't have anything with me, which I know has happened, I would never be like, Can we find a shop? Yeah, and I remember when I was younger, I used to even be shy. If I were coming over to the UK, I would already have my pads or whatever in my bag, ready to go.
Just so you'd never get caught.
So I'd never have to go to the store with you.
Right, in case I had, yeah, I see what you mean, yeah. That would be absolutely, yeah, no.
Like, that was embarrassing, which doesn't make sense.
Well, again, it's just culturally constrained. It's culturally constructed.
But it's funny now. I remember a few years ago, sometimes, you know, friends or boyfriends will go to the shop and they're like, do you need anything? But could you get me some tampons, please? And it's kind of interesting to see how they react.
Right.
Because some of them have siblings.
Also there are variations.
Yeah, and they're like, so which ones? And it's quite funny, but also I'm like, you can tell that it's embarrassing. Like, why is this? It shouldn't be embarrassing. Like, I understand why you feel this way, because I know that I felt this way until a certain age, even going down the kind of tampon pad aisle and looking, and if anyone saw you there,
oh my God, yeah,
it was
oh. Yes. Oh, I'm just looking for a friend. Not for me. No, of course not.
So it's just kind of silly why it is that way. But maybe it's because you weren't like.
But it's also kind of strange looking at it the other way around. That, and I understand why you would be nervous.
But why wouldn't
shy.
you, for example, ask and say, "So, do you need anything? Any pads, tampons?" It wouldn't be you wouldn't ever say that.
No, you're right. And there's almost...
Because then I might feel more comfortable and be like, yes,
but again,
please.
it's because men put this on women. It's just like, oh, this is nothing to do with me. This is part of the females' realm. This is part of the females' sphere, and somehow we project it on you. It's not for me. And you're right to raise that. But I was going to say, it's also interesting looking at the other way around about how you were nervous, embarrassed, whatever, about saying, oh, by the way, Dad, it's my period, until you are 22. And it's like, oh my God, you mean all of these years you've never had a period? It's almost, well, I clearly know that you must be having periods.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what that's about. I do know the most embarrassing thing. Actually, there's always embarrassing things with your period. Maybe it shouldn't be embarrassing. And I really appreciate people that try and make you feel less embarrassed. Because it is quite, you feel quite embarrassed if you get stains and what have you, if you bleed. And I really appreciate, and I'm sure a lot of people do, when someone tries to be like, why are you embarrassed? There's literally nothing to be. You couldn't control it. You didn't purposely sit here.
It's not as though you were lying in bed thinking, bleed, I want to.
Yeah, it's not like you came to shit on my sheets on purpose. Like it was, you clearly didn't mean for this to happen. But I remember one time we were staying at one of your friend's house, and I got my period in the night. And I got the sheets really dirty, and I just didn't know how to say it. I didn't have the heart to, and I never said anything, and just left.
Really?
And because it was something that's it was, I think, one of the, if not the first year, beginning of having a period and dealing with this. Whereas I feel like now if it happened, I'm like, oh my God, let me just wash it. I know how to get it out. Don't worry. Whereas at the time, I just couldn't even fathom that I'd have to speak to them and be like, listen. And ultimately I probably made it worse because
well, actually I remember, you've triggered a memory with me now, and I may have been misremembering this, but I seem to remember there was a time when you came over to stay, and actually I think it wasn't here, it was in the previous house. And you clearly had bled during the night, not massively, but you clearly bled during the night. And you hadn't told me. And I only discovered it when I went to change the sheets some days later. And I thought, my initial reaction wasn't like, oh my God, what's this? My daughter's having a period. How terrible is that? My initial reaction is, why didn't she tell me? I could have
washed it immediately.
I could have washed it immediately.
Exactly.
Now it's been dried. It's dried, and I've got to.
I know, that's what I mean. That then it's actually worse because then it's harder to get out, if that makes sense. So I just remember that, and I was just horrified at the time. And I just couldn't tell you or your friend's house that we were staying in because I was like, this is just. I just couldn't deal with it. It was just unbearable to deal with when it's just...
So we really ought to do something to raise awareness about this.
Yeah, I guess.
Because it shouldn't be a taboo subject. I mean, it happens to you every month.
Yeah, I mean, kids piss themselves.
Oh, I pissed myself when I was a child once, and I'm still embarrassed about that to this day. I pissed myself in front of loads of other people. Seriously.
I pissed myself in the supermarket.
Oh, I know you did.
But I think
when I did this, I was so embarrassed I ran home, and it's very similar. What I did is that I basically had wet trousers and pants, and I took them off and hid them.
Yeah.
Because I was so embarrassed, I didn't want my mother to find them.
So, what's the deal?
I don't know. We've moved on from periods to pissing our pants.
To contraceptives, to penises, to vaginas.
I think what we're saying about this.
I think there's a lot of topics that haven't been discussed and are taboo.
Well, you just said what I was about to say is that the common subject, that the common theme running through this particular podcast is that they're taboo subjects and they're taboo between genders and between generations. And we've got to break down those barriers.
Indeed.
And it takes both sides, I think, to be honest.
Oh, yeah.
It requires men to take more responsibility and therefore help women to be less embarrassed about certain things.
Or to understand. Just be like, I don't understand what a period is. Could you explain it to me, please?
Yeah.
What is the deal with this? Or I don't understand how the contraceptive works. Can you explain this to me?
And maybe, again, I'm not trying to put blame on somebody. It might sound as though I am. We both need to be better educated. So nobody has ever told me really what a period is, if you see what I mean. Mm-hmm. So I wasn't educated about that at school. My mother never mentioned it. My father never mentioned it.
Which would also mean that then you as a father didn't have information to give to your daughter, which is problematic.
And obviously,
if I got my first period while I was living with you, you would have to be the one to deal with it. And I think I could have dealt with it, but that's only because I've learnt from them, from having girlfriends and stuff. Obviously your mother. So it's through my relationships with other women that I've learnt about it. But that's not the way you should learn about it, I don't think. No, not necessarily. And I think, I'm curious because there's clearly going to be fathers that have daughters without any maternal figures. And I wonder how they feel about talking about it, if they've kind of grown out of that stage of embarrassment because like, well, it's my job as a parent, regardless whether I'm male or not, and I don't understand it. I'm here to tell you what it's about and be here and make you feel safe or whatever.
And contraception as well.
Yeah. I think we should gradually wrap up, but basically there's a lot of topics which were discussed, and I don't know if we should pick them apart further in other episodes more specifically.
I think also, just to finish maybe on this note, unless you want to say anything further, is that we touched on some very sensitive issues for men and for women.
And non-binary people. Not all people that have periods are women. Sorry, we've been saying women, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you identify as a woman just because you're having a period. Okay. Just to put that out there. Yeah.
I was meaning it in a biological sense.
Mm-hmm.
It's that we've had questions from listeners before, and if you've got questions about this, then do feel free to ask them, and we will very sensitively try and address them.
Yeah. So I think it's just like an awkward. I don't know why it's awkward. It's one of those topics where again it's like, why is it awkward to talk about with your dad or with a man? Kind of same thing.
But that also makes it a good conversation for this podcast.
Yeah, that's why I kind of wanted to open it up. So yeah. Also, I'd be curious to see if you are a menstruating listener, who explained to you what periods are? Your dad or your mum?
Oh, I bet 90+% mother.
Do you think so?
Absolutely. I bet even, I'm guessing, I have no basis of evidence this whatsoever, entirely guessing, I bet even if you are a daughter brought up by a single father, the father probably finds a female friend to talk to them about it. I'm guessing. It's part of the taboo.
Well, we're going to try and break that. I'd be interested to maybe dissect these issues because I feel like we kind of touched on stuff, but Some of it you can go very deeply into, because we kind of talked about periods, contraception, blah, 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 blah. So if you're interested in hearing more, and obviously maybe with more actual facts,
just let us know if you're interested in this. Maybe you feel awkward listening to it. Again, let us know if you do. So anyway, hope you enjoyed this. It's not the easiest subject to talk about, as you will have gathered, but it's still important to talk about it. You shouldn't dodge the issue.
Yeah, right.